Hey guys, welcome back to Arry the Stag. TR Tony here, sat in the garage on a Saturday afternoon. A little bit blustery, windy and showery outside here in the UK. Bit of sunshine currently, as it turns out. So we might just be able to get up to the Stag and show you what I'm talking about in a few minutes. Sat here by my fairly recent acquisition. I'm sure you've seen that on another video. That's the Triumph 2.5 PI boot lid. Having made a bit of a mix-up on the first one, we've got this one now, so that's ready to go down to Allen's when we get to that. But this afternoon, I thought I'd just check in, and we featured it today on Saturday Sockets. If you want to join us on Saturday Sockets email, just sign up and you can join us on there for weekly shenanigans that we get up to every week. And it's to do with Under the Bonnet last weekend. I went out to get some emergency and essential supplies, not least of which to fill the car up with some fuel, because it had been quite a few weeks since I'd last been out in the Stag. And there's a couple of other kind of errands I had to do as well. And there was a graunching noise under the bonnet that got slowly but steadily worse and worse over a period of time, to the point that I thought I was losing head gasket or the water pump was failing, I was out of water or whatever. And to cut a very long story short, I was getting very concerned I'd even get back home and not have to go on a low loader. So cut a long story short, as I say, I've done a bit of investigating, I've got the answer, and I'll just walk you through what I found, and maybe just pays a bit of dividend or two for others out there as well, a similar experience, because it is a bit of a tricky fault to see, but when you know what it is, it's blindingly obvious, isn't it? Let's go and have a look at the car and I'll just show you what I mean. So we've jumped into the car, just going to start it up. Ignition all light on, just wait for the tick 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 of the fuel pump to equalise the pressure, get up to pressure, put a little bit of choke out just to lock that off. And then this hasn't been started for a week, I've just got it out of the garage yesterday evening, but let's just see how we go now. So 2 seconds. So let's just see how we go now. We'll get the ignition on, choke is on, oil on, ignition, okay, ready, aim, fire. So it hasn't been started for 24 hours. There you go, first time. Always a pleasure, this car. It always seems to start up first go, which is great. And you can see the tachometer there starting to indicate the revs. So we're all good there. Just lock off the choke so it's just a little bit leaner than it was when I first started it. One job I've got to do is change these windscreen wipers, which I'll probably do in a separate video. Actually, they're a little bit of a fiddle to change. I've got them, they came this week, so that's good, but I'll need to do that. And there we are. Okay, so all sounds okay at the moment. I think I'll go under the bonnet and have a look. Let's see if I can show you what the problem is. It's going to be Murphy's Law now, of course. You have a problem all week, and then when you come to show somebody, like a garage, it behaves perfectly. Okay, so let's just going to keep that running a minute. On. Okay, so I want to give it a good rev. I won't do any harm to give it a bit of a rev or two. 3,000 revs there. Just put a bit of choke on just to keep it from dying. Just takes a few minutes to warm up this engine. 85,000 miles this car's actually done. I think it's pretty genuine. All the MOTs and everything else that goes with the car would point to that. Okay, so right, okay, the engine's running now. Let's go and have a look and see what we can find outside. Bear with, let's just jump out. Ooh, if I can. Pull the bonnet. And actually at the moment it doesn't sound too bad. Ticking along nicely. Might have got a slight blow on the manifold, I think, that might need looking at. But aside from that, we're good. Just see if I can rev it. Now, I don't know if you can see, but if you look at that fan unit, very carefully, you can find that it's moving backwards and forwards along its rotational axis, and that is actually the problem. You can see it wobbling. Can you see that? And at the moment it's not making any noise, but I think you can see that is definitely got a wobble on. This took me most of last weekend to try and find out what the problem was. And to cut a long story short, it's the Torquatrol unit, the viscous fan coupling bearing in the middle of that fan unit, which, as I say, when you're cold like this now, all sounds tickety-boo to the naked eye. But I'll turn the engine off and I shall show you what the problem was. Let's turn the engine off 2 seconds. Right, okay, let's come back now to the front of the engine. And believe me, I've been through all the different aspects. I thought, was a head gasket gone? Was there something wrong with the rockers? Was there, some water dry in the water pump down here, or what? But actually, when you come down here, if you look, you can see that is a very loose fan. Can you see that? I was almost of the view that it might even be a loose pulley bolt, but I'm moving that by about ½ an inch to an inch along the axis, which clearly is not what it should do. So I think the bearing in the Torquatrol unit itself has gone, and that is our issue. So let's go back to the garage now and I'll talk you through what I'm going to do about it. And for those who wanted to see our garage, here it is, nearly completed. Still bits of wiring to do, but getting there slowly. Had these doors made in Wimborne, and this is what the garage looks like inside, so forgive me if it's a little bit messy at the minute. We're still moving in. The old one is still here, so we're not going to go too far with that in the way. We need to knock that down soon, but I just thought I'd show you what we're doing here and come back to the here's UNY's engine, maybe just to show you what we're talking about. And I was just pointing down to here, which is the pulley, crankshaft pulley bolt, which takes quite a bit of torque, about 120 pounds-foot, I think it is, tight to get that off. So what we've got to do with the UES car I've just shown you is get this off, and then also the fan unit that I've just showed you, which is actually mounted on the crankshaft here. So that's a job we've got to do. We tried to get in on this bolt last weekend, but we've got absolutely no chance because it's so close to the radiator. There's no way that you could get access to that. So we have got to take the front of the engine, front of the car off, basically the radiator and all the hoses and everything else, just to get into there so we can get access to it. Then I believe we've got to take this bolt off to change over the Torquatrol unit. And I understand there's 1 or 2 people online out there who say a good pair of Stilsons on here locked off against a chassis or a bit of wood will hold it enough to be able to unlock that. So that's all good. Let's just have a look at the fan unit. And we did cover this a couple of weeks ago, coincidentally. I did talk you through the Torquatrol or viscous coupling unit, as it's also known. And who was to know such provenance within a week or two that we'd be actually back to look at it properly. Let's go back to the bench and have a look. Okay, so this is the viscous coupling that came off UNY 49M 2 or 3 years back when we split the car, and I think you can see it's pretty straightforward. That's the actual viscous coupling unit itself there, and obviously the fan is then I believe bolted to that. So that's what we're looking at in the car just now. And the cause of all the trouble is this little bearing here, which if you can see, I can just turn that around in my fingers, and is designed. It's a very clever piece of kit. There's actually, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself from a couple of weeks ago, but the idea of this whole unit is that it's on the crankshaft pulley, as you saw. At low speeds, that bearing kind of binds on the just here on the outer, so the fan turns at low speed basically. And as I understand it, once this unit gets up to about 2,800 RPM or thereabouts, the fluid, i.e. the viscous bit that's inside this body, starts to shear, and so the fan starts almost to feather off. It starts to slow down, and if you think about it, by that time you're either doing speed or you're running along, so there'll be lots of air coming through the radiator. You don't need to pull through as much air as this will do at very low speeds, which is obviously what it's designed to do. Our problem, I think, is in this bearing here, that it's so slack and wobbly and knackered that you saw just the amount of play that you could see on the engine itself. So that's interesting. I'm glad we found it, because believe me, the noise this thing was making was unbelievable. I didn't know if the timing chains were going, if the water had run dry and I had a dry water pump squealing away or what. So it's quite an alarming noise, and akin to kind of throwing a tyre or wheel over the back of the car onto the road and then towing it along flat sideways with a bit of rope, and it came and went very, very graunchily, with almost a metallic noise as well, all from under the bonnet. And obviously this was happening on the front of the engine, but it took me a while to work out what it was, and this thing is basically doing that on the axis. So as I showed you a couple of weeks ago, this obviously goes on the front here. You take your pulley bolt off, obviously, and then thread it on there, and that sits on the front of the engine. And as I say, the whole thing is doing this business on UES. Although it's imperceptible, it's only a tiny little movement, but it was enough to make such a loud noise that it was kind of quite scary. I've also had a bit of feedback from Chris Lyles on this, and I'll talk you through that in just a sec. So I'm back on the bench now, and just talking about Chris there for a minute ago. He talked about back in September 14, he had an issue with some remanufactured Stag fan blades. In other words, these kind of things here that were made from a Far Eastern source, let's call it that, but they were not as manly as the original ones that came with the car, to the point that at high speed these were so flexible, or too flexible, the wind was getting behind it. It's actually cutting into the actual radiator itself and causing damage. So I know that there are several owners out there who have had a similar experience. I don't think this is a problem one. This came with UNY. It looks pretty robust, I would say. Doesn't look aftermarket, but it's just something to be aware of. I think there were a batch of fans that were manufactured a few years ago that are probably still out there in drivers' cars. I think Chris managed to get around it by without upsetting the equilibrium, shaving off some of these fans, because they're made of nylon or plastic or whatever, such that it was less aggressive and didn't attack the radiator anymore. But it's just a bit of feedback he mentioned for us to watch out, and if anybody else out there notices anything around these, we'd be really interested for any feedback. So as I mentioned, the root cause of it is this bearing. Apparently the mounts for Series 1 or 2 are different, so it's just something to be aware of. Chris has always said as well with the fan, if anybody's had a later than 2014 replacement and they're getting on fine with it, he'd like to know, and probably one or two other Stag owners as well, because he would like to upgrade to a more recent one, but not one that's flimsy. Over here we have the new unit, and I had that delivered this week. I got it from James Paddock with a few other goodies in the box. So that obviously is going to be a direct replacement for that. And you can see the fixings for the fan obviously go on here, the bolts, 4 bolts there. And that is the new bearing inside there, which on the face of it looks a bit loose. But I'm also advised on the instructions that because it's been sat in one particular position, that the fluid will have drain to one side or another depending on which way it was stacked. So you've got to let that you've got to move it a little bit for it to start to find its feet, so to speak. But that's the new unit which we've got to get into the car, and we will be hopefully back on the road in the not too distant future. But yeah, just thought I'd share that tale with you, because it is an issue, one that you really would not know what on earth it was when you first hear it. It sounds horrendous, it really does. This graunching noise from under the bonnet. So if you hear something like that, just check out your fan, see if on the spindle it's got a slight wobble. If it has, then it's likely that this bearing has gone. And if you imagine, there's quite a lot of pressure on that, because that's, continually, being accelerated and decelerated. The viscous piece is the shear of the fluid inside, and over 2,800 revs it starts to shear more, therefore slowing down the fan because you need it at less at higher speed rather, and obviously at lower speed it kicks in and grips better. So that's it. All good. Arry the Stag. All right, guys, so hopefully that was useful for you. It's just one of those blinking things that had me absolutely bamboozled last week. I was driving along, as I say, I was picking up one or two emergency supplies we needed, including fuel, and the noise was getting louder and louder, graunchier and graunchier, more and more embarrassing. Imagine turning up outside, I think it was at Europarts in Poole, with a huge great queue of people waiting to go in, with this very noisily sounding like a bag of nails Triumph Stag, which was not very good street cred at all, but there you go. But at least we found it now. We know what it is. It's that bearing on that viscous coupling, otherwise known as a Torquatrol unit. So if you hear that when you're next driving along, obviously just check it out. Give that fan a bit of a wobble, and if it is wobbling, then clearly that needs looking at. We will, of course, be covering this whole job when it's a bit better weather. I've got all the kit now from James Paddock this week. They've been really good. I actually ordered on Sunday and it was here by Wednesday, even on an economy delivery. I know that's UK, but very, very impressed with them. So speak very highly of them. And yeah, let's see how we get on. But in the next week or two, with a bit of better weather, if only I could say it, I'll be under the bonnet, taking out the radiator and putting this new unit on, and then we'll be able to go driving around, hopefully with lockdown being eased as well. Good. Okay, well, thanks for watching. Hope you're having a great week wherever you are. Please be safe. We're not out of the woods yet, but we're certainly heading in the right direction, so that's great news. Please feel free to like, share and subscribe, and don't forget Saturday Sockets on a Saturday. Hook up for that if you'd like a free email every Saturday on some off-camera stuff we get up to. And also don't forget to order your Arry the Stag badge of honour. It's one of those stickers you can stick in your car, tax disguised, all free of charge. Just go onto our website and log on and you can order one free of charge anywhere in the world. Cool. Have a great week, guys, and we'll see you online on Arry the Stag very soon. All right. Cheers, guys. All the best. Bye.